There's a text sitting half-written in your drafts right now. Not deleted, not sent. Just there, sitting between you and the person you meant to reply to 3 days ago, quietly ruining your peace every time you open the app to do literally anything else. You've got 12 tabs open. You've watched 4 episodes of something and paused it mid-scene, right before the reveal, and somehow that 15-second cliffhanger has more real estate in your head today than the entire movie you finished and loved last month. None of this is new. It's not even close to new. In the 1920s, in a café in Berlin, a psychologist named Kurt Lewin sat down with one of his students and noticed something strange about their waiter. The man never wrote anything down, ever. He'd walk table to table, take order after order, hold an entire dining room's worth of food and drink combinations in his head without so much as a notepad. Lewin was impressed enough to test it. He asked the waiter, minutes after a table had paid and left, what that table had ordered. The waiter blinked at him. Nothing, not a single item. The order that had lived so vividly in his memory, moments earlier, had simply evaporated the second the bill was settled. Lewin's student was a young researcher named Bluma Zeigarnik, and that waiter didn't just amuse her. He became the seed of one of the most cited findings in the history of psychology. So here's the actual question underneath all of this. Why does an unfinished thing sit so much louder in your mind than a finished one? Is it really about memory, the way it's been sold to you for 100 years? Or is something else going on entirely? Something you're about to find out most people, including most psychology textbooks, have gotten slightly wrong. Back in her lab at the University of Berlin, Zeigarnik ran a real experiment to chase down what she'd seen in that cafe. She gave participants somewhere between 15 and 22 small tasks, some physical, like stringing beads, some mental, like solving a puzzle. Partway through some of the tasks, she'd interrupt the person and move them on to something else, never letting them finish. Afterward, she simply asked everyone to recall, from memory, which tasks they'd worked on. The interrupted tasks were remembered about 90% better than the completed ones. Zeigarnik published the results in 1927, and it fit perfectly with Lewin's broader theory of the mind, the idea that setting a goal creates a kind of psychological tension, an internal system that stays switched on and active until the goal gets completed. Finish the task and the tension releases, like a held breath finally let go. Interrupt it, and that tension just stays live, humming, which is supposedly why the waiter could hold an entire order in his head right up until the moment it was paid for, and why the version of you at 1 a.m. can suddenly remember, with perfect clarity, every unanswered message you've been avoiding for a week. This idea didn't stay in a psychology journal. It got everywhere. It's the reason a to-do list app doesn't just help you organize your day. It makes the unfinished items visually loud so your brain won't let them go. It's the reason television shows learn to end an episode 1 beat before resolution, instead of 1 beat after. It's the reasoning behind advice like, just open the document even if you don't write anything. The idea being that starting a task is enough to switch the tension on, and once it's on, some part of you won't rest until it's off again. For about 100 years, this has been treated as settled science. A tidy little fact about how memory works, repeated in productivity books, marketing seminars, and psychology lectures, without much of a second look. Here's the twist. It doesn't hold up. Not the way it was originally sold to you anyway. Researchers have been quietly trying to reproduce Zeigarnik's original result for decades, and it has been, in the words of one of the earliest attempts, in 1968, a remarkably difficult thing to pin down. That study found no memory advantage at all for interrupted tasks, and it wasn't alone. A large meta-analysis published in 2025, which pooled together the available research on this exact question, found that once you set Zeigarnik's own 1927 numbers aside, interrupted tasks and completed tasks were remembered at almost exactly the same rate, a ratio close to 0.99. Statistically, that's a coin flip. Across a century of attempts by other researchers, the specific memory boost Zeigarnik reported has essentially failed to replicate. So what actually happened in that Berlin cafe? Here's where it gets interesting, because the story isn't, none of this is real. A closely related finding, sometimes called the uncanny effect, named for another of Lewin's students, has held up far better across the same modern research. It's not about memory recall at all. It's about the pull to go back and finish something once you've started it. Give someone an interrupted task and free time, and they'll spontaneously return to it and try to complete it, again and again, far more reliably than chance would predict. That part of the story checks out. In other words, you probably don't actually remember your unfinished tasks better than your finished ones. But something in you does keep tugging you back toward them, wanting resolution, wanting the tension gone, and that pull is the part of the phenomenon modern research keeps confirming, even while the original memory claim quietly falls apart under closer scrutiny. Which changes what's actually happening to you at 1 a.m., staring at that unanswered message. It was never that your brain filed it under important, do not forget. It's that some part of you opened a loop the moment you saw it, and closing that loop is the only thing that's going to switch the tension off. Not remembering it more, resolving it. That's the part almost nobody tells you when they bring up the Zeigarnik effect, to explain why your to-do list haunts you. It's not a superior memory system quietly working in the background. It's an unfinished door that your mind keeps walking past, checking if it's still open. So think about the text still sitting in your drafts. It's not that you can't forget it. It's that some part of you refuses to close that particular door until you actually do. Reply, delete it, or decide, on purpose, that it doesn't need an ending at all. What's the one unfinished thing that's been quietly sitting in your drafts, your tabs, or the back of your mind the longest? And what would it actually take for you to finally close that loop?